that's no different. So with that group, you say that you know each other quite well. Do you find it's different if you participate in video conferences where you're not familiar with the people, you haven't met before?
Yeah, personally I find that harder because so much relies on, you know, facial expression and particularly if it's a slightly small screen, or if they're, you know, they haven't set the camera so that the camera's right on their face, it can be hard to read people's reactions, and you don't know in a room if we're sitting over from each other. I can tell whether you're, you know, looking bored or, you know, if you're nodding and whatever. I know that what I'm saying is going down well, but I think sometimes people are scared to move on a video conference. You know, people don't like to sort of go, yeah, you know. So it's difficult to pick up their reactions, and if they haven't set the camera so that you can see them quite close up, you know, you have no idea of what their facial expression is. So I think if you know people, it is easier to conference with them.
Yeah, but there's also a lesson for sort of video conferencing learners there that they need to zoom in as much as they can, and to a certain extent, I suppose they have to kind of exaggerate the nods and visual cues.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing we see correspondents doing on the news, isn't it? When they're being asked a question, they're nodding away to indicate that they are, the connection is there and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I try and do it, but I sometimes feel like a nodding dog because I'm kind of going, yeah. And I think, you know, depending if you're using the voice switching system, you don't want to sort of go, yes, too much, because you'll find that it switches back to you and everyone's a bit confused about who's talking. So yeah, I think there's a whole set of sort of body language skills. Maybe we need little signs to say that. That's a pretty good idea.
Hold up a smiling or something like that, or a thumbs up sign or something. I find that when I talk to people in order to analyse video conferencing in this way, we can easily end up sounding quite negative about it because we're pointing out the limitations and so on. So can I ask you to, you know, what are the well, you did mention that it's good for having a focused sort of meeting on a particular subject and moving things forward when there's more than just the two of you that would normally be a telephone conversation, particularly with people that you know quite well and you're used to working with. But what, you know, can I just ask you to sort of sum up the positives so that we end on a positive note?
Sure. I think, as you say, for those focus meetings, it's great, and it also has a cut-off time. You know that television screen is going to switch off at 2 o'clock, so you know, I think it really focuses your mind in a way a meeting doesn't, because you can think, oh, well, I've another 5 minutes, or, you know. So I think that's good. In terms of the distances travelled, it is fantastic, because I mean, even to go to Carmarthen takes an hour, you know, so that's 2 hours out of the day. Someone has to drive, or you have to go overnight. I've got small kids, so I don't particularly like going overnight to things, because it means leaving them. So for me, personally, that's great. Another benefit that I think is that it's easier to grab people into a video conference on the off chance that they might be needed. We did some conferencing with Glamorgan about implementing e-assessment, and had we asked them to come here, they'd either have just brought a couple of people, I think, or they'd have had to bring a load of people. Whereas if it's just an hour in a video conference, you can say to somebody, oh, can you just pop into the conference? They might need you, they might not, and it's only an hour out of their time. They haven't really lost anything. Whereas if you say, oh, can you come to Aberystwyth with me for the whole day? You know, it's a bit more of a, you know, big decision as to whether you go or not. So I think that kind of having people involved on the off chance that their expertise might be needed for 5 minutes, you know, is really valuable. And time-wise, you know, we've got good conferencing facilities. They're close by. It is, you know, 5 minutes to go to the conference. It's not, you know, what time am I going to leave? Am I have to go early? What time am I going to get back? So, you know, I think that's good in terms of sort of efficiency, I guess, using taxpayers' money. You know, we're not kind of bombing up and down the A470 all the time. And generally, the kit works really well. I have had very few problems a couple of times with sound going, but generally it works fine. And once you're in the conference, you're less likely to get interrupted. If you make a phone call from your office, there's going to be people coming in and out. It's less easy to schedule it. Whereas if you know you've got your 5-minute walk to the conference, I'm going to be in there, and that time I'm going to focus on this issue, and then I'm going to come out again. It really does help that sort of focus.
That's a good point, actually, because I do find I've got 2 phones in the office, and very often when I'm having, you know, a sort of important in inverted commas conversation with somebody on one phone, the other phone goes off, or the video conferencing box in our office goes off.
What made me think of this was I tried to attend a conference by live streaming the other day. It was great, it was a fantastic conference, but then someone knocked on the door and said, can you do this? And then someone rang up and said, oh, I need to talk to you about this. Whereas if I'd taken myself off to somewhere to watch it, it would have been like attending the conference, but I wouldn't have had to travel to Bath or wherever it is.
Yeah. Last question for you. You've got